Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome founder of the New York Forum, Richard Attias.
Bonsoir. On est proche de la fin, c'est la dernière plénière.
Good evening. We are reaching the end of this plenary. Thank you very much for staying on with us. I am sure that this plenary will be very interesting, and it comes just before the closing session. Our plenary will be mainly in English because, of course, of the nationalities of our participants. So please welcome Jeff Martin. He is staying with us. Now, Jeff, I'm not sure whether he actually introduced himself, but basically he was one of Steve Jobs' main workers, main helpers, and he helped in terms of innovation and so on at Apple. So thank you very much. We have to think out of the box, and he is a symbol thereof. Next to Jeff, we have a young Egyptian entrepreneur, Tina Boulès. She will introduce herself. She is an entrepreneur as well in her own country. She is a trained pharmacist. And she will tell you about what she does now. And His Excellency, the Minister Mamoun Bahoud, who is the Delegate Minister for Industry and Commerce. He is in charge of SMEs and investment in digital economy. So thank you, Mr. Minister, for having accepted the invitation and to talk about disruption here at this session. Now, next to the Minister, we have Rahaf Farshoush. I don't know how to introduce her. She is definitely a global citizen. She was born in Syria at the age of 7, I believe. She left, then she lived in Canada, in Chicago, in the US. You did the digital campaign of Obama in 2008. And she has written several bestsellers that came on the New York Times list. We will talk about that more. Now, Mohamed Briki, who represents the Association of Companies in Digital Technology and mainly information technology in connection with offshoring. He is a fantastic engineer. He created, over 20 years ago, a company for IT services, and it has become a holistic company. We will tell you more about it in just a moment. And finally, this evening, Alexa von Tobel is here with us. She has been nominated as one of the 18 women in several magazines who are world changers. She can definitely change the world, and she will tell us more about it. Alexa is also a great author. Her books have been very successful in the New York Times, and they've been listed there. She went to Harvard College, and she went to Harvard Business School. So she stayed at Harvard for a while. And Alexa will be telling us a great deal. She is a young woman who came here, although she is 6 months pregnant. This is her last trip before going back to New York and spending a little bit of time at maternity. Thank you.
Monsieur le Ministre.
Mr. the Minister, I am not starting with you because you represent the government and you're the only one here, but
Disruption means for you, and what was in your life until now the best example of disruption in your personal or professional life?
Well, thank you very much, Richard. I'll try to make it in English.
Please.
Disruption, my personal experience with disruption. As you may know, I am an engineer. Engineers don't like to think out of the box. We like everything that is rational. We like everything that you can predict and you can calculate it. So everything that has to go with disruption is something that we don't really appreciate. But the thing is that my first job, I was an equity trader. And when you're trading on this kind of markets, everything is about prediction. Everything is about prediction the future. And when I started this job, we tried to set up a model to predict the future based on historical data, actually. But we decided to add to it a disruption factor. It's a factor that created noise for us. It was a difficult factor to manage, but it was a special model. And the thing is that we used this model in a special moment in the history. We used it in 2008 during the financial crisis.
Wow.
And as you may know, everything went up and down this year.
It was the chaos.
Yeah, it was the chaos. But thanks to this model and thanks to this disruption factor, we went through this period successfully. And our desk was one of the main and the best performers during this year on the streets. So I can say that disruption changed my life because we were raised as one of the best desks in the streets, and my career went very quickly after this moment. So I think I went from an engineer that have everything to do with rational, and I moved to something that's disruption changed your life. And I think that disruption is all about that. It's about killing a market and creating a new one.
You think we can be disruptive in the government?
I think so.
How?
In economy, I think so. I think that this factor, this disruption factor, is the one that makes the difference between you and others. The one that anticipates disruptions. And this anticipation of disruptions makes you predict the futures. And that's how you can win new markets. Because when you create a market, you need to destroy someone else. And by creating a new market, you need to adapt your model to it. So
Jeff,
it's definitely an important point.
Jeff, which advice could you give to the minister about, I would say, injecting disruption in the government and not just in the economy?
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree that that economic factors disrupt more than technology and products do. I think I sometimes over-reference the music industry and other things that I've played a small role in disrupting, but it wasn't the technology, it was the ecosystem, the value chain of music industry and how broken it was. I think that when you use technology to remove the middleman, it is more disruptive than the technology itself, because the people who are not adding value are staying in the way and now get removed. I think that governments I was lucky enough in Gabon with Richard Atier and his team to unveil the first African Citizen Survey. And it was quite interesting to see the impact on the governments and heads of state who wanted to be associated with that, because it was hearing the voice of youth, powering their voice to show a level of optimism and interest that I think the governments found very important. So I think that governments do listen to economic factors, but I think because of the number of young people in the population of MENA, they have to listen to young people particularly.
Jeff, what the late Steve Jobs was doing every day in your company to have this permanent, day-to-day disruptive business model?
Well, what it was that we hated focus groups. We don't believe that groupthink ever develops innovation. It destroys innovation. So the philosophy at Apple that Steve imbued and inspired was the fact that we have to take risk, and we have to do it in a way that we risk being wrong. And we have to always be willing to give up making money to find the next way to build a business and value. But probably most importantly, which Steve Jobs doesn't get enough credit for, in my opinion, is he was the first of the real technology visionaries that made money not his purpose. He was the first CEO to only take $1 a year. Yes, he had already made his money with Pixar, but also, he didn't even have much stock the first 2 quarters he worked at the company, because he had sold it when we bought Next. So the point being is it is so critical also to disrupt by understanding that money is never the objective. When money is the objective, just like groupthink, you almost always fail, because you chase yourself. How do I make money now? And how you make money changes quicker sometimes in technology. So the key is great product design that doesn't listen to others, that takes the risk of failing, and isn't about money but creating a satisfaction, is really, I think, the Steve Jobs formula summed up.
Alexandra, you are a pure Harvard product, I would say, being at the college and then at Harvard Business School. Do you think there are some universities and schools who are really teaching disruption or not?
So I think one of the very exciting things and why I feel like disruption is part of my blood.
Your DNA, it's part of your DNA.
It's part of my DNA. Mark Zuckerberg was in my class at Harvard undergrad. So I watched Facebook be created, and I was one of the first, call it, few hundred users. And you quickly watched how it changed everything. It changed how you look up people, how you date, how you get to know one another, how you share information. And I think when you see and you sit so close to something like that, I think a few things happen. One, it shows you that in your own life today, when you see something that could be done better, when you see something that the current way of practice doesn't make sense, or is too expensive, or is inconvenient, or your life would be much easier if it changed, and you start to think like that every day, and you start to think like a disruptor, I think that's where the pure innovation really comes from. I used to keep a book, and in fact, I need to do more of this. But every time I had a big idea, something that bothered me in my everyday life, and it often does start from, necessity is the mother of invention. Think about your own life every day. What would make your life better? What could make every aspect of your daily or monthly activity deeply innovative? And start writing the ideas down. And when you start thinking like that over and over, you start to find yourself getting really comfortable and sick of the way that things are done today. Just because something's done today a certain way doesn't mean it's the best way. And that's what became my second language.
Why were you considered as one of the 18 women who can change the world?
Well, in the United States, I had a vision of why couldn't getting access to financial advice be affordable and consumable, and why when you have a lot of money, is it easy to get access to advice. But when you have no money, when you're in your 20s or 30s and you're starting to build wealth, no one's catered to coming to talk to you and helping you figure out your financial life. And so LearnBest, my company, has now become the fastest growing financial planning company in America. And we've made getting access to financial advice as affordable as a gym membership. And it's just a totally different way of thinking.
Do you think your model could be exportable in Africa,
Absolutely.
in Morocco? Which advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who would like to go to financial services and to have a disruptive approach?
So first, think about the globe. The globe right now is the petri dish of innovation. Don't even just think about your own country. Think about the ideas that are taking off in Australia, in New Zealand, in Russia, in Buenos Aires, and think about those and bring them back home. I think one of the coolest ways to get ideas is to look at what's working in other communities. We're all humans, right? We may live on different continents, but we think the same way, we act the same way, and we're driven by many of the same things. And so I think look outside of your state, look outside of your city, look outside of your country for ideas, and then bring them back. And so I hope many of you bring LearnBest to Morocco. I think that's the right way to start thinking about innovation.
Rahav, I think you wrote a few books about the impact of technology in all these changes. Can you share with us what were your conclusions, and how do you react to what the Minister, Jeff, and Alexa said about disruption?
I mean, so when you look at disruption as a whole, a lot of the findings that we have right now is basically that thanks to, like what Alexa was saying, that technology has made the spread of ideas happen much faster than before. And a big part of my research has actually been focused on the power of individuals. Thanks to access to ideas, thanks to access to technology, thanks to access to a global network, the millennial generation is the most connected network ever ever, we have the ability as individuals to have a level of power, or what I call micro-influence, that has normally and historically been reserved for governments and for large organizations. So what we're seeing right now is endless possibility. If you have an idea, if you have something that you're very passionate about, now is the time to do it. And in terms of listening to also what the minister is saying, I think it's important to note that governments are also waking up to the fact that the ideas that are spreading are happening much faster than before. So the idea that you can do business or that you can run a country the same way today as you could even 5 or 10 years ago is almost unheard of. I was on the new media team for the Barack Obama presidential campaign in 2008, and that campaign used sites like Facebook and Twitter and text messaging and emails, and they completely rewrote the rules of how to run a political campaign. And those changes have carried on into President Obama's presidency now, when you look at how you have whitehouse.gov, how you can start petitions, that the White House has a policy that if you start a petition online that gets to a certain number of signatures, an official response, they will give you an official response. I mean, even 5 or 10 years ago, that was practically unheard of. So as individuals, you now have an opportunity to have a dialogue with big companies, with startups, with other innovators, with the government, and you can have your ideas be heard at a level that was unprecedented.
You told me you have a conviction that now you can even reinvent the way you protest. Not going to the street. We'll come back to Egypt in a few minutes, where they made the revolution just being on the street. How can you protest with your disruptive approach?
So again, I go back to what Alexa mentioned, that when you see a problem, traditionally, I'm going to use you if you don't mind. I'm going to use your amazing story. So when you think of an issue, traditionally the access of financial information for young women, if she wasn't going to do this, what were her options? What would they have been 5 years ago? She could go to the bank and she could say, please help me. She could go to financial companies and say, please help me. She could go out in the streets and say, women deserve more financial information. But she didn't. She created an alternative, sustainable solution that didn't require her to go out into the streets. She just proved that there was a better way. And in proving that, she was able to have access to, you have hundreds, if not thousands and millions of people that are using your website
Millions.
now. Millions. She has millions of people, millions of women who, through participating in her company, were able to protest against the fact that women did not have access to this information before. So I think what I love about entrepreneurship is that instead of just going out into the streets and expressing your displeasure about something which historically had a purpose, what you can do is it forces everyone to be empowered. It says, if you think you can do this better, then offer a solution, offer a new business model, offer a new company, offer a new idea. So instead of just saying, I'm unhappy, I can say, I'm unhappy, but I have a way that I think we can do this. And when the right idea and the right technology and the right startup take place, then everything else mobilizes around it. For Barack Obama in 2008, he had 2 million people who were creating social networking accounts on his social network to mobilize. He had 2 million people who said, I believe that this is a better way to run a campaign. Alexa has millions of people who are saying, I believe that this is a better way for me to manage my financial history. So I think it's much more efficient now to leave it in entrepreneurs and have all these bright minds that are solving problems instead of just waiting for traditional institutions to do so.
Minister Bohoud, how do you react to what you are hearing from all these amazing entrepreneurs? Before I ask Tina about what is happening in Egypt.
It's a great experience that I'm hearing today. It's amazing to have this kind of experience shared together. But I heard about going fast as a governmental everything. I used to be on the private side, and I used to look at the private sector in the way that they need to go faster. I was chasing them to go faster. But once you're inside, things are different. And I can tell you that things are more difficult to do from the inside. And I believe that entrepreneurs and the public sectors can go together. But On this experience,
What do you do
know,
in Morocco for
yeah,
that?
Morocco is
and
special.
especially for SMEs
Exactly. SMEs in Morocco, you know that SMEs are more than 90% of the
of
enterprise
the economy.
in Morocco.
Yeah.
We got a lot of small businesses in Morocco, but we need to move from small businesses to smart businesses. And it's not easy. It's not really easy. And we are working on that. I heard a lot of experiences during this GES. I heard an experience about a successful entrepreneur from the Silicon Valley that is telling us that garage in the Silicon Valley are special. Some of them are museums, and a lot of young entrepreneurs start their business in a garage.
Like Jeff?
Exactly. The problem is that young Moroccan cannot do that today. And my job, part of my job is giving the opportunity to young Moroccan that wants to go there and to create their own company in their garage to do it. And I'm working on a legal framework that is called the auto-entrepreneur, the self-employed, that I think will really change the things.
This will have an impact on the informal economy, no?
Exactly, yes, exactly. So we are giving the opportunity to everyone and to find this entrepreneur that will be probably the Steve Jobs of Morocco, to have the opportunity to get into the formal sector and to create his own company in his garage or in his student room. And I think that's a hard work, and it's going to change. These are kind of things that can change the whole.
This is already established, or it is in process?
We are in the process of voting in the parliament. It's going to be next year probably, but it's a hard work.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Tina, tell us your story, please.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Tina. I'm the winner of El Mashroua TV show. It's the first reality TV show for young entrepreneurs in the MENA region. It was broadcasted on one of the biggest channels in Egypt, national channels. Now I have a company or a startup.
You're a pharmacist, no?
Yeah, I'm a pharmacist, but I did not work in a multinational corporation. I went to start my own company in renewable energy, waste to energy. On the show, we used to have many challenges, and this was a way to educate people through media on how to start your own businesses. They used to see us fail, they used to see us make wrong things, and they can replicate the idea easily. After the show, we have toured Egypt from north to south, from west to east, visiting all cities, small and big, and trying to deliver the message of entrepreneurship to youth and to inspire them on how can they start their own businesses, that maybe we have some economic problems and some political unrest, but we can still do our dream, we can pursue our dreams and go after it.
How Egypt is doing today?
Egypt is doing perfectly fine. Well, we have a very...
I'm asking that question because in 3 months from now,
Okay.
we'll be in Sharm el-Sheikh organizing this economic conference to, I would say, reinvent and to bring back investment in Egypt.
Okay.
So what entrepreneurs need to really have now more, I would say, tools and more opportunities, because you are really the driving force of the new economy of Egypt?
Yes. Well, Egypt, as you know, Egypt is one of the biggest countries in the region, if not the biggest. We have the biggest population, and also we have a great emerging ecosystem. Many projects were done. The Rise Up Summit, where all the entrepreneurs gather. We have a replication of Silicon Valley called the Greek Campus, and GEW Egypt. So many events happening, gathering all the entrepreneurs together. Well, what we would really need, I think, bridging more peer-to-peer experience. Like if the people from Silicon Valley can come and communicate their own experiences to us, this is how the world becomes smaller and everything can be done again. And
You were born in Suez, no?
yes, Suez.
Okay, and I just wrote that there is a huge project now to build the second Canal de Suez,
Yes.
which is a multi-billion-dollar project.
We have so many projects happening in Egypt now. The Suez is one of them, where we are planning, or the government is planning, for the Suez Canal to be a great port where all the world come and the ship and everything's like gather in it. And we also have a renewable energy city constructed in the south of the country. So we have a lot of mega projects happening. What I would like to see in the government doing is sharing these projects with the young entrepreneurs who have the great ideas of and how can they turn these projects into real economic value.
Thank you very much, Tina. So, vous pouvez peut-être préparer des questions. Je vais
You can begin to prepare questions. I am going to be giving an interview in a few moments. Please prepare the microphones, the roving mics, and then we will ask questions. Mohammed Shakib, basically you wear two hats. You are an entrepreneur and trained engineer in telecommunications and so on. You work in offshore deals, and on the other hand, you defend the interests of a profession. And then you have an association that represents 68,000 people, 1.5 billion worth of turnover. So let's talk here about disruption. Disruption is a driver of entrepreneurship here. And what are the regulations or deregulations which should take place? Tell me about your industry in Morocco and in the region. Now, let us look at the past first. The APB is an association that works on offshoring and so on. We represent approximately 90% of the IT people here in the country, with 68,000 members. Now, APB 10 years ago was something very different. We represented about 10% of what we represent today. Now, why 10%? First of all, there was a collaboration between the public and the private domains in 2004, 2005, thinking about offshoring. So the public and the private spheres worked on offshoring in Morocco, and that represented about 80% of the sector. So disruption in our sector is something that's very common. It's a daily word in new technologies. It's vital, in fact, here, locally, and in the world. Today, we are working on a vision for the sector at the horizon 2020. Why 2020? Well, let me tell you about the definition of disruption first. Now, we don't just do it for the sake of it. There has to be a problem there, and we have to, it has to be a problem that we can't fully control. And from that moment, we start to think about disruption. And then we start to think about the future. How are we going to deal with it? Now, I have a third hat that you didn't mention. I am a citizen, first and foremost. Now, services for citizens are fundamental. In some countries, the digital economy has been considered a driver for progress, for collectivities, for the family, and so on. And when that is done, there is a horizon, there is a target. Now, as a citizen, today, if you need an administrative piece of paper, you have to jump through many hoops. 15 or 20 years ago, it was the same for companies. Now today, thanks to smartphones, you can connect to portals directly. In our sector today, we are living through that disruption. We're jumping through the hoop.
I would like to talk about Syria for 1 minute, if you don't mind. What hope have the entrepreneurs today in Syria?
I mean, that's a very difficult question. What's happening in Syria right now, the only way to really describe in Arabic, بيوجع القلب شو عم يصير بالشام. بيوجع القلب حرام. And it's merci. Very, very hard to witness the situation there. I have family there, my grandparents, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles that are in Damascus that are sort of living through this. And I think it's very complicated. I mean, I'm usually a very hopeful person, but even now, when I see what's happening, I say, for the time being, it might be the best to leave until things settle down. There's pressure from both sides. There's pressure from the government. There's pressure from the fighting that's happening. And what's really concerning me right now the most is what's happening to all the refugees. That's where we're actually seeing some innovation. We're seeing people trying to be resourceful, but they have very little. There are people that have been in those camps now for over 3 years. And as a Syrian, as an Arab, as a woman, as a person, it just breaks my heart that we as the international community have yet to coordinate enough of a response to deal with what I think is going to be considered one of the biggest humanitarian tragedies of our time. So for now, I know I wish you asked me a more hopeful question, but for now, all I can do is wish for their safety and pray for their safety. But then I look at what Tina is doing, and I think maybe please one day we will get to the situation where it'll be stable enough that they'll be open for investment, that we'll see young entrepreneurs building new things. And when that time comes, if I could say one thing, it would be when that time comes, I would beg all of you to see what's happening in Syria and to not just bring your money to Egypt and to Syria, but to all the Arab countries that are trying to rebuild. We as a community, we have to be strong and we have to do it together. So thank you.
So any question from the audience, please? We will open. Okay, so where is the microphones here? So we have a few questions on the left side of the room, on my left. Please, can you stand? And it's really a question, starting by word and question mark at the end, please. And short.
So I would have a question to Mr. Martin. So I understand the difference between the want and the like.
Can you put the microphone close to your mouth, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I understand the difference between the want and the like, and the need to build a product that customer need. But when we look at examples such as Uber, Airbnb, they're not the first ones in their industry. They're not the first ones to address a certain problem. But the reason why people use them is that they like the product and because the product is easy to use. So don't you think that building a product people like is as much as important as the product people want?
Yeah, it's an extremely good question. Often when it's always somewhat hazardous to represent Silicon Valley, so I don't pretend to represent the community, but I think that there has to be an emotional attachment or with a product to be successful, particularly when you're in the consumer product space and it's a physical product, not just a digital product. However, I think we've taken it to the extent that we make products that are too expensive for most of the world. And I think that the way that our Wall Street and economic community go is if you look at cell phone manufacturing, the companies getting rewarded are the ones that have the highest gross margins, that are making the most money per unit. I think that's going to have to change. I think you can do great innovation and design at very low cost. I think it's greater innovation at lower cost. It's harder to do at lower cost. So when I talk about moving from the era of social media, big screen to the era of small screen and wearable, rooted in location, action-based products that are rooted in need, there's going to be just as much innovation, and I think that there can still be an emotional attraction to the industrial design. You're never going to see me say that industrial design isn't important. It gets people's attention. You're never going to see me say that user experience and UI, isn't important. It pulls people in once you get their attention. But more and more, that cool-looking smartwatch, or more realistically for Mina, the wearable technologies that I'm seeing right now in Kenya and so forth, are rooted in another product, maybe someone who designs the clothes, that are rooted in, an app that connects to a disposable cell phone. So the ecosystem is going to require support of development innovation that's not dependent on the Apple and Android store for apps, but actually is partnerships with great industrial design, great product design. And I think that doesn't mean you have to have something that just is cool. I get really frustrated because I've played a small role in it when people say wearables are all about having music on your watch, where you're, listening to music when you work out. That's absolutely going to be there for some of the market. But I am seeing things that I get frustrated by. Like I said, I'm seeing healthcare apps in Nigeria that are some of the most innovative product design I've seen. There's technology around making microscopes, the photoscope. Now that actually was rooted in Stanford, so there's still some good ideas coming from Silicon Valley. But that's incredible innovation, and that has incredible design. And it may not be about, a badge of belonging that I'm cool, but it speaks to the fact that it meets a need, and that's cool too. And we need to change the ethos to make innovation, healthcare, and education cool. And I think that that's going to be very much by the role entertainment has, and celebrities like will.i.am, who transitioned from music to really being committed to education and healthcare. Because frankly, none of this matters if we're not healthy and we don't have access to education. And none of this matters if women aren't driving it. And that's what I think really has become obvious to me in the last few years.
Can you stand up, introduce yourself, please? And
hi, Daniel Goldman from the U.S. Thanks very much for an excellent discussion. A question for Ms. von Tobel. If you were going to build an app today that taught 1 million young people around the world how to become entrepreneurs and create sustainable growth in their communities that would create millions of new jobs, how would you go about doing it?
I love this question. Thank you. I think it actually first starts with, and I really do believe this, that step one for all entrepreneurs is you have to actually believe that you deserve to dream of something that doesn't exist. I actually think one of the things that I see over and over that stifles a lot of innovation is that there's not enough people dreaming out there of thinking about better ways for things to be done, whether they're stifled in their local communities, et cetera. So I always say dream big, because no one else is going to actually take the time to dream for you. So I think that's actually step one, is have confidence in yourself and have the ability to think of the big idea. And that's actually the hardest part. After that, it's about the infrastructure of being able to cement the idea into action. It's about being able to get access to capital, whether it's through grants or through angel funding or through crowdfunding or through venture funding. You have to be able to get to that next step. And then the most important thing you can do to piggyback off of what this first question is, you need to be able to get a product out as quickly as possibly so that users can start to bang against it. Because to add to that first question that was asked earlier, which is, it's not just about having the big idea, it's about the fastest and best execution. That's why something like Airbnb was better than a lot of its predecessors. It was not the first idea, it was actually just the fastest and best execution, and that's all about listening to your customers. So that app that I would create would actually end in listening to nothing else except your earliest customers as fast as possible so that you can quickly create better iteration of what your service is.
Yeah, the gentleman on the front, please. And then we have 2 other questions.
My question?
Can you stand up, please, and introduce yourself? Can you stand up?
Let me ask.
Can you stand, please? The microphone is on the second row.
Because of my.
You want to read the question? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My question for Alexa and Jeff. How do you assess possibility and potential of successful, very local products in developing countries in a deal of pushing and moving toward global markets? And what kind of qualities and characteristics the products should have to succeed in developed markets and developed countries? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Jeff.
You want to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, ladies first.
I was just going to say a few things. So one of the things that's so amazing about the fact that this world is so interconnected, and I'm seeing so much of it happen right now in New York City, there are probably 6 companies that were started in just the last year alone that were about artisan products, local products, about finding a way to source and create a global market for that artisan thing that's created in, the argan oil in Morocco, and making it so that you can buy that in an everyday need for a family in Florida. And so I think actually the best answer to that question is really focusing on the quality of the product, on the artisanship of the product, on the story of the product. If you want to create something that's going to have the character to be able to endure global trade, it's got to be special, and you're not going to be able to fake that. But on the flip side, the coolest thing about the world getting smaller and smaller, and I said this backstage, in 5 years, the amount of innovation that we're going to see is going to be 5x the innovation that we saw the last 5 years. The curve is just getting so much faster. We're all better connected. And so if you do have a big idea sitting here in Morocco today, go do it, because it will be the biggest idea in New York City next year, and we will hear about it, and we will buy it, and we will support it.
So I would just add to this, one of the reasons I love mobile as an awareness platform for any product, both an app or a physical product, is mobile is all about local. And to support what was just said, the best solutions are rooted in from where you are in a local community. But one of the things I think is being missed, and I think it's a uniquely African opportunity, is that more and more product development is going to have to be ecosystems. It's going to have to be connecting different parties to transact value. There aren't a lot of great app successes that are moving around globally unless they're video games like, Candy Crush and stuff like that, which really worries me. The big opportunity right now in innovation, which I'm sure is here, but I didn't see it as visibly as I thought I would, is the corporate sector with the consumer sector. Corporations have jobs that cannot be filled with the university graduates of this marketplace. That is a huge ecosystem problem. The customer of education isn't just the student, and I say this as a former professor, it's actually the corporation that hires that student once they graduate. So corporations are desperately looking for great app development that they can fund, not to make it their app, but because Facebook and Twitter are failing them when it comes to a mobile banner to reach a young person. So one of the greatest opportunities I'm seeing in energy and healthcare are apps that are working around internship rewards, education awards, scholarship rewards, even finding young people and girls particularly to keep them committed to science. So there's a job potentially waiting for them 15 years down the line when they graduate. Now that's very long-term thinking, and that's not American thinking because we're short-term. But again, this is where the UN Development Agency is doing some great work, much like the show we were talking about, is they're thinking, how do we get the energy industry, good and bad that it is, the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry, and help them fund app development with young people that creates a job out of school and starts rewarding through that app, not banner ads that nobody clicks on, but actually the reward of internships and scholarships and jobs. This is going to be the new kind of funding that I'm seeing take off in the last year in the developing world. Corporations are the deep pocket, and they have no way to reach youth because TV does not work and banners nobody clicks on. So I hope to see a lot more between this time and next year of corporations funding app development, not to make it the energy app of the corporation, but to provide the rewards that are really needed, back to need, rooted in location with education and healthcare.
Thank you, Jeff. Monsieur le Ministre.
Minister.
To Moroccan young entrepreneurs, what should be the areas where they should start a project based on the vision you have and the vision that His Majesty have for, I think you have a plan which is 2020,
exactly.
2025. So which advice are you giving?
First of all, I am very happy to hear you speaking about ecosystems, because we started a strategy in last April. It was all about ecosystem and in our industrial sectors. So we are trying to promote this interaction between big companies and small and medium companies. And we believe that it's in this interaction where we will find new jobs.
Absolutely.
So I'm really, really happy to hear that today, especially from the US and from you, Martin. On the other side is that in my ministry, there is only one meter that counts, is how much job creation a sector can do. And we are ready to support any sector that is creating jobs for our young. So either if it's in disruptive technology or in textile, it doesn't matter for us. The most important for us is creating jobs. And in the vision, we are trying to promote, by speaking about disruption, we are trying to promote Morocco as an African hub. And you know that everyone agrees that the next area of growth is Africa. And there is a lot of business to do in terms of innovations, especially if it's going 5 times faster in the next years. I don't know if you have seen in the mobile sector, in the mobile banking sector, the numbers coming from the African continents are just crazy.
Huge.
And it's going to Europe. It's actually the first chances we're seeing of innovative app development rooted in Africa now moving to Western Europe. So that reverse innovation is truly happening with microfinance and microloans, which is very exciting. That came from here.
Exactly.
It didn't come from Western Europe.
Last question before I ask. Sorry for discrimination. I would like a question from a lady. We didn't hear any lady. Okay, here we are.
I think I already got a question. Excuse me?
No. The lady here on the third row, please. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello? Hi.
Please, go ahead.
Oh, I feel honored being a girl.
Can you put your microphone close to your mouth?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Coman. I'm from Chile, South America. And I had a question for Jeff. So you spoke about the UN Development Agency and the efforts that you're going to do in funding and with the Smithsonian here in Africa. Have you thought anything for Latin America?
Absolutely. I just was trying to speak to the audience, and I obviously didn't do a good job. Latin America is a critical market, and as Richard Atier helped teach me, Latin America and Africa have much in common. I definitely saw that at the New York Forum for Africa in Libreville, Gabon, earlier this year. They're very similar aspects. The one thing I would say that the other UN agency that's my favorite is the UN Agency for Women. They launched a critical program, one of the most brilliant marketing ideas I've seen in any market, called He for She, which is identifying the men and communities around girls, focusing on the girls' education, healthcare by focusing on the community of men and parents around them. This is as much about Latin America and education, healthcare as it is Africa, Southeast Asia, and frankly, the Western world as well. So I think that you'll see the UN. I hear talk about refugee camps, and we were discussing that the world has never had more refugees than it has today since World War II. It is truly one of the great challenges and tragedies of our time. And that is absolutely something that we need the UN for. And as someone from Silicon Valley that typically the UN isn't on our top list, I've learned that the world can't solve these problems without the UN and programs like He for She, where men sign a petition to support their daughters, their wives, and the professional development of gender equality, which I'm passionate about. So that's as much about Latin America. Dynamic women, which at Apple we always marketed to. If you notice our marketing, it was always skewed a little bit feminine, because we learned really quickly with our marketing that if you skew to the dynamic woman who's empowered, everybody else follows. And that is absolutely the case globally, and He for She is a great example of that.
Last question for each of you. Short answer, please. We are very close to the end of this 5th edition of the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Marrakesh. If you have one message, one advice to share with the audience, to share with 1,000, we had more than a million people watching us live on the web. What will be your advice, Alexa, and then Mohamed Shakib, and then Jeff, and Rahaf, Minister, and you, Tina?
So if you've been here for the last 2 days and you're excited and inspired and motivated, I would ask yourself one question, which is, when you're 90 years old and you look back on your life, is there something that you would want to be doing today? Is there that idea that you want to go pursue and you just really need sort of the guts or the courage to go take that leap and jump off and start it? And we always know that when you ask 90-year-olds what they regret about their life, they never regret anything that they did, they regret what they didn't do. And so I would say, if you have a big idea, if you're excited or passionate about something, if you left feeling innovated, go find a real plan to action so that you can start creating.
Mohamed Shakib, s'il y avait un message, un conseil
If there were
aux jeunes entrepreneurs, à l'audience,
a message for the youth, what would it be? What I say is that today you're in Morocco. Please come as frequently as you can. Morocco, one of the components of this country is to reduce the digital gap. This is a message for investors who would like to come to this country as well, to the young entrepreneurs to develop more content in education, health, justice, transport, etc. Morocco is committed today in order to develop smart cities. Try to come and try to be active, and we will see the results very shortly.
As a visionary.
Not really, but I worked with some, to say the least. I would just say that there's a common thread in all of this, which is there's never been a better opportunity for innovation, but innovation's very misunderstood. It's a word that's used too often and means less because it's been devalued. I think the thread of what we all believe in, I don't want to represent the panel, but at least what I heard, is that we need to make great things. We need to make great products. We need to make things that are rooted in need and solve a problem. They don't have to be first, they just have to be best. And they have to solve a need as the objective over greed. The money will always come. I really believe this, if you believe anything's possible, but it can never be the objective. Product design is killed by greed and it's killed by groups. And I think so much of the future is in this part of the world. I spent a lot of time here, and I thank you for inspiring me, because I've never been more excited about the world today than what I'm seeing developed here in the present tense.
Great. So you have the same, you are sharing the same conviction than Vice President Joe Biden, huh?
Yes.
Rahaf.
I think that maybe it's a perspective from living in many different countries, but there's one thing you could do, it would be to reimagine, if not forget borders completely. I am Syrian, I am Canadian, I am a little bit French. After being with you for the past few days, I feel a little bit Moroccan. And so I think if you have an idea, don't just look at your neighborhood or just your city. Look at the world, because people are more connected than ever. And as Jeff said, you would be surprised at how many people are willing to help you. Reach out to somebody on Twitter, or send them an email, or go watch videos on YouTube, or take an online course from Stanford. Just realize that we are all the same, and we are all citizens of the world. And so don't be afraid to ask for help, because people are more often than not willing to help you.
My God, this is not what I'm doing, but my wife is doing that every day, I can tell you. Now I understand.
It's dynamic women.
Monsieur le ministre, un conseil, un avis?
That's look at my country, look at my continent, Africa, as a huge continent of opportunities where the future is. And I hope that in this room we will have the future Moroccan entrepreneur that will move from the startup to the company that will change my country and probably my continent and the whole world. And I'll do my best to support it.
Thank you. Thank you. Tina, the last word for you.
Okay, so if I want to say something from my heart to all the people who are watching us and all the people in the hall now, I would like to deliver a message of peace from my country. Please come to Egypt and invest in Egypt. Connect to the people of Egypt. This is not my flag, actually. This is the flag of Aboud. He's one of the CEOs of the great event in Egypt, Rise Up Summit. And we're proud. When you come to Egypt, we'll help you so much. Connect to the entrepreneurs in Egypt, and just thank you.
Thank you all. Please, a round of applause for Alexa, for Mohamed Shakib, for Jeff, for Rahaf, for Minister Bouhoud, and for Tina. Thank you. Very inspiring discussion. Thank you.